have with me here Monica Demarco, an Albuquerque-based musician, a performer, a composer, a teacher, a visual artist, and a dancer, all sorts of things. And yeah, I first of all thank you for talking with me and sitting with us. We're really excited to have you working with us this semester for the Robb concert.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Sweet. So now that I have a chance to talk to you, I was hoping first off to ask just in general how you feel like all of your different musical engagements, all of your different artistic tendrils, kind of interact with each other as you're doing the myriad of different artistic projects that you engage in.
Yeah, I like this question. I think that I mean, I'm one person, so all of these things are filtering through me, and of course, they probably inform each other in ways that I'm not even aware of, in my cognitive mind. But yeah, I think that a lot of my approach and how it's changed through kind of my process with getting my master's in social work and everything is that I try to be person centered in everything that I do. So like what that might mean for my teaching is, I'm not trying to make one way for people to study. People come in, they tell me what they need, and I will give them the pieces of what I have that suits their needs. When it comes to like composing, I'm interested in writing for people more than just instruments. So I care about who the violinist is and who the pianist is, and I want to know their work and what excites them, and like bring that into it. Um, so I would say like that's maybe something that is ubiquitously colored all of the different ways that I engage in the world is wanting to focus on people over like the production of a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think that that's pretty evident in your the output and all of your work, your au revoir. It's so collaborative based. So I think I think it definitely makes sense that you would be focused on actually making those connections and elevating the artistic production through that. I think it's very cool and you definitely see it.
Oh, thank you. I'm
Of
glad.
course.
I'm glad it shows through.
That leads me to another question that I wanted to ask, and it's specifically about the way you gear your pedagogical approach towards composition and personal expression that way.
So how do I teach
Yeah,
creativity?
exactly. Yeah, how do you
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, just what's your overall philosophy when it comes to teaching in general, I guess, and incorporating creativity exactly.
I think that it's important to invest with people on what is important to them and what they're doing, and to really try to see them for who they are and what they're making. Like, I definitely don't want to impose what I think is valuable or what I think is interesting. I think in a lot of my experiences with teachers, that would be kind of a rock and a hard place where the teacher is like so invested in their own creative process that the lessons are just them kind of putting that on you. And there's value in it. I mean, always to absorb other people's work and think about it with them. But if I'm teaching someone, if they're my student, I want to know what's important to them. A good example is I have a student who came in to study songwriting with me, and they love making like loops and beats, and they work on Ableton. I don't have experiences with those things as much, but I was like, well, I can sit down with you and invest in these ideas and what you're writing and what you're creating, and we can still like do a lot with this, even though you're not writing for classical instruments, right?
Hmm.
So, and trying to really hold that value of like the person-centered approach and trying to be with people in their goals, because the success is meeting your own needs, is meeting what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
That's in your heart to do. So I don't need to impose my voice on my students, I
Yeah,
guess.
I
Is what
like
I would
that.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like you just find a way to connect with the passion that's already inside of them and just nurture that, get them to a place where then they can, they feel comfortable pursuing it and you can do it together. I like that. That sounds a lot like like when you're collaborating with another musician or another composer or something, you find those the things that they're passionate about, and even if it's not something that you really click with, the collaborative process is like, yeah, I'm going to mold myself to that as well, so we can do something together.
And it's an
That
opportunity to grow as a teacher then, because you're like, "Well, I guess I'm gonna learn Ableton now."
Yeah,
So I can
exactly.
help this kid who wants to do this. Yeah, so there's definitely opportunity for growth in both directions, and that's so important.
Yeah, yeah. I especially in teachers. That's yeah. I I really love
Yeah,
that.
I'm glad you feel that. It's good, you know?
Definitely. That's a really, really great overlook of the way that you go about teaching, and I think it could teach a lot to most people. Now, I was hoping that you could give us an introduction into the projects that you perform in specifically, and obviously that has a lot to do with composition. But I
Mm.
guess it just depends on what you consider for yourself a performance project.
Gosh, there's so many, and I am so lucky and grateful that I've been able to engage with music in a lot of different communities, like communities that necessarily wouldn't necessarily intersect. I've been in a lot of bands, so I play bass.
Mm-hmm.
My most recent project where I was playing bass was Chichara. It's three bass players and two drummers,
Cool.
really massive kind of
That's
sound.
heavy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so I mean, I've done my time in kind of the bar scene and what local music, how it comes together, and the best part of that is the community building that I've like learned from that process of
Mhm,
not only making things, you don't want to just make things awesome for yourself or your band. You want to make something that's awesome for everybody around you. There's got to be community buy-in for events to happen and be successful. And if everybody feels like their work is being, included, and that they have a reason that they want to be there, it can't be singular, or what's the word? It can't be about individual exceptionalism. It has to
mhm.
be about sort of the whole growing together to make things happen. That's the only way we get anything done in Albuquerque. Nobody is here like trying to make
Become a
millions.
star, yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody making music here is doing it because it's in their heart and they have no choice.
Yeah,
Um, it's a labor of love, right? So
mhm,
everything we build for each other and the skills we trade and what we do to make that happen is really lovely. So that has built a lot of how I think about music, is the opportunity to be in the band scene and do touring and festivals, and that's been wonderful. Uh, I would say like the academic world is somewhat at the beginning of my process. I mean, I did my bachelor's at UNM, and
mm,
there was a lot that I gained from that process. But I think that was in stark contrast to that sort of like, yeah, the individual exceptionalism, which is what's promoted in sort of a collegiate setting, is you're trying to be amazing, right? You're
mhm.
trying to kind of, there's not as much sense of being collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to be the best at the audition. You want to be, yeah, I
Winning the
think
contests, yeah.
winning the contest, getting the award, doing the thing, and being celebrated as you are independent of your community.
Mhm,
Um, which I think at the time I was invested in that. And then after graduating was like, wait, actually all this other stuff that I thought was like side projects or side work, this is what has been really developing my voice.
mhm.
I want to lean into this for a while.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
I
hope
yeah.
that answers the question. I mean,
No, that was
yeah,
perfect. I loved your illustration of the communal aspect of the band scene. I really connect with that. And yeah, I think that's just kind of what's important about doing music. And I think that your point that we're here in Albuquerque doing it is a great point. Everyone who is doing music here is doing it because they love it, not because it's what makes them the money or what gets them the fame or anything. And they just want to
absolutely.
connect with other people around them, and that's why they do it.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
even on my solo album, so my solo project is Cthulhu, and I just
Mhm.
put up, the live performances from that album release in 2019, and it was a huge community effort, and it wouldn't have
Mhm.
been possible without all of the connections that I've made, through the Gatas y Batas Music Festival, and,
Mhm.
there were so many people involved in that show and some monster players that
Mhm.
just were cool about playing with me and practicing with me to make something special.
Mhm.
So even though it was technically solo work, it was a huge collaborative project, and
Yeah.
um, that's a big piece of who we are in Albuquerque.
Yeah. I'm sorry that I'm jumping around so much.
No,
I
you can
suppose
jump
that,
around.
honestly, this question probably would have been better when we were talking about your pedagogical techniques. But I love when composers specifically gear their music towards a variety of skill levels, and
Mm,
they'll be able to express their voice in a way that someone who's just new to playing can still connect with it.
mm.
And I know that you have several works like that, most notably your set of piano little pieces. I don't really know it, but to call them
They're just
little
folk,
folk
yeah.
tales.
Yeah, they're based on New Mexico folklore. Um, yeah, I think it is wonderful to write for developing musicians because I remember I was commissioned for the Santa Fe Children's Orchestra, and I remember sitting down with the director, and he's like, "We only have one position. We don't have sharps. There's not going to be any shifting." And you're like, "Okay, so you have to. It gives you kind of a beautiful set of constraints that is really going to get some interesting creativity out of you. And for that children's work, I did the burning of Zozobra was the
Mhm.
theme, and I had them working on shifting because it sounds like something burning and decaying when it's a little bit off, right?
Yeah.
So as the piece progresses, like the intonation is intentionally supposed to get swirly, and that was really fun. And then I think, thinking about the kids and what's important to them. And for that piece, I had attended the rehearsals and saw that, they're middle school. So they're transitioning from this place of just kind of following the rules and listening to their teacher and wanting to write them a piece where, the cellist like stands up on a chair and takes over the orchestra and they're dissonant,
Mhm.
and that was really fun to get them to do it. And at the end of the piece, the conductor turns around and sits down, and the kids finish the piece. I wish I had that filmed. I think they still have it, and I wasn't able to get the video, but that was a really
Yeah.
fun piece. The piano works, I was thinking about wanting kids to feel proud of being from here.
Mhm.
Um, and seeing, there's something very special about seeing yourself or a story you've always heard or, reflected in something you're working on. It makes you more excited,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
places that you've been to, exciting ideas.
Stories that you
There,
might have heard.
yeah, there is
Yeah.
a surprising amount of like alien stories associated with, like not just Roswell,
No,
like
yeah, but
New Mexico.
the ones that you wouldn't even think of. Yeah.
Yeah, so I ended up with some interesting, like a lot more like alien-centered kids
Mhm.
pieces than I would have thought in the beginning. Um,
That's not where I thought my music was going today. That's
yeah,
funny.
I read more of the collections. I was like, wow, there's a lot of these.
That's
Um,
fun.
yeah, yeah, I love writing for developing people.
Mhm.
It's good.
I love that idea that you described in the Zozobra piece, where you just take the inevitabilities of like what is going to happen if you ask them to do this hard thing, and then you give them the confidence to do it, but do it correctly, even though they're doing it incorrectly. That's just such a smart solution to that limitation, and yeah, just wonderful composition. I really love
Well, have
that.
you ever, if you work with kids, they can be off or different in a way that you can't even recreate sometimes. And it's
Hmm.
fascinating,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
like I think this kid is doing some kind of metric modulation or something. And
Yeah.
I don't even know if I
I'm
could like play
entranced
it
by
back.
it though.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think, I don't want to like beat them into what they need to be doing with the score. Sometimes I want to be
Yeah.
like, that is really cool that you
Uh-huh.
can do that. So, keep it.
Yeah.
And this, but also that. Save
Yeah.
that.
I
Okay.
was wondering if you could give us a little bit of a taste of what your new piece, Map Songs, is um, about. What inspired it, and what was the process like composing for it? Oh, and I
Yeah.
also, well, it's a very layered question because I'm also interested in the
Sure.
text of the piece and I'm interested in the electronics. So I guess it's a little bit more of a taste than what I'm asking for, but I'm interested to hear about is what
Mhm.
I'm saying.
Oh, I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah, it was a long working process and I'm excited to talk about it. So,
Cool.
yeah, so I started combing through the archive trying to like find, and the archive is very cool. Have you ever had a chance to like
Oh
peruse
yeah,
it?
I love it. I got to
Okay,
spend
cool.
a semester in there actually, and actually put together a collection for a composer. It's great. It's honestly awesome.
Yeah, well, and it's so there's a lot of beautiful recorded history because a lot of the ways that people transmitted the news came through music. So the
Hmm.
songs about weddings and burials and what's going on. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But the thing that
Hmm.
ended up grabbing me was this little music box that they found in northern New Mexico. The piece is titled "Wedding of the Winds." There's no words. It's just a clip of that music box
Hmm.
playing like an unknown melody.
Yeah.
We don't know what it goes to. It doesn't have a text, and
Hmm.
it was kind of just the wedding of the wind idea, kind of, and then also the way the recording is captured. I don't know if when you go through the archives, you can hear that some of the pitches are in between, and there's a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
um, like wobble. So it was interesting to hear this recording of this music box. I just couldn't. I like kept clicking on it, super interested in it, and
Yeah.
hearing it a lot of times. Um, and then started diving in. Well, okay, I want to work with wind. So I tore through a bunch of poetry, of course, studying local and
Hmm.
trying to look for themes of wind. Um, and I think what really drew me to the Tohei piece is that it is an example of wind as a catalyst of change, but from a resilience perspective. So a lot of times as a literary device, you see wind is a catalyst of change, and it's usually like an uncontrolled negative change,
It's something to be feared, maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's an element of fear with it. And in this piece, there's a line where she's talking about the wind reshaping the crane's bodies so that they can transcend into the new world.
Mm. Hmm.
And I think that we are in that place right now. We are trying to recreate ourselves or reshape ourselves to break into another world or a new place. I guess socially. Uh,
Individually, societally, all like
yes,
basically
everyone
just
is.
in general. Yeah, I definitely know what you
Yeah.
mean.
We're all in a process of reshaping by the change that has affected us, right? If you're
Hmm.
using the wind as that kind of metaphor. So this resilience piece is what I was like, I have to have this poem. And I
Yeah.
don't, I had never met her before. So it was like I just blasted her socials and her like work email
Hmm.
was like, please, can I use your text? And she was very cool about it. Like
Yeah.
not knowing me at all to
Hmm.
allowing me to use her work was a very kind thing to do.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think so. To answer the piece of your question that's about the electronics kick in at a point where we need to move into another world, like the
Hmm.
cranes have broken through
Hmm.
and the sound palette needs a dramatic change
Yeah.
to be part of that new imagining of the world. And the final minute of the piece is
Yeah.
improvised to embody kind of our collective vision that needs to be part of imagining the new world, right? Like I can't
Oh,
imagine
nice.
it by myself. So, and this is also part of like getting into the people involved and letting them put their heart in it
Yeah.
too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there'll be a shift in sound palette and then also like uh their thoughts, their intuitions
Hmm.
in the final minute of the piece. Um yeah, collective vision in the future. Oh, I would say we didn't get too much into like the things that are influencing the works, but also on the electronic piece. I had never written for flute before,
Oh,
and
interesting.
my brother happens to be a wonderful conductor, so he sat me down. I was like, "Can Daniel, can you give me a flute lesson?"
Mhm.
And he played me Kaya Sarajevo's Noah Noah.
I love that
It
piece.
is stunning.
I
I just
love that
it's
piece.
another thing that's I have to just listen to this over and over,
Mhm.
and I was definitely inspired by the incorporation of electronics in that
Well,
particular
that makes
piece.
me really excited to well, even more excited to hear it. That's awesome.
Yeah, so there is that influence there. Um, yeah. I
Very
didn't know
cool.
if you wanted any more information, like, about theory or anything specific?
I was wondering, do you often incorporate improvisation into your compositions, or is this something kind of new?
This is the first time. I think I've always kinda kept them in separate boxes. It was like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, this, ensemble improvises, that's what we do here." I'm writing a piece, so I'm gonna have, like, my touch on it. It's gonna be
Yeah.
in my control.
Mhm.
But thinking about, like, this idea of needing to transcend that for the possibility of a collectively imagined future was like, I'm gonna have to let go of control of this composition at some point.
Trust in the
So
people that I'm working with.
and
Yeah.
trust everybody and, just go for it. So, and I had to kinda give myself permission. It's like, it's okay to bridge these things
Mhm.
that you thought of as so separate because conceptually it's sound. And that's kind of the test for anything for me is I really want a very strong through line of conceptualization. Like, even before we get into what pitches are we gonna use or
Yeah.
rhythms or anything, I have to know who I'm writing for, why, where we're doing it, if that's in line with the initial,
Yeah.
um, concept and everything. So that's also a part of the collaborative process that is maybe takes a long time with me, is I have to
Uh-huh.
answer those questions before we get rolling. So there
Mhm.
was like a month and a half of figuring it out before we even got to I sat down to start writing.
Definitely. No,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, and you see, yeah, you see that in people that are very, yeah, it's just very focused in on their art. Like you want to make sure that you are yeah, understanding what you're doing, so you can make sure that you're actually doing it, and or before you can actually do it, you need to make sure that you know.
Well, and it's such a it's more than just the labor, it's the heart piece that, like, I wanna make sure that everything is lined up before I give everything to it,
Okay.
because I can't
Interesting.
not. I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever been able to make something that isn't deeply important to me or connected
Got
to me,
you. Okay.
I can't,
Yeah.
um, I don't think I'd write a very good jingle. I don't
For
know.
sure. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so it's good. It's a good it's been a good process this time, like,
Mhm.
learning how to do it and get
Nice.
everything in alignment.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really
Yeah.
excited to hear the piece get realized. Have you been able to hear it yet?
No, okay, so I'm at that point where you've only heard it, like, the MIDI
Your
version.
own model, yeah.
That Sibelius plays for you, and it makes
Mhm.
Sandoz sound like
Yeah.
you go,
For
"Whoa,
sure.
this is not what I had in mind."
Not what I wrote, I thought.
Yeah, I've gone through the parts individually and played them myself to, like,
Yeah,
make sure that they were functional,
but
but no,
super different from actually getting to hear
hear
it
what that
come
needs to
out, yeah,
so
organically. It's gonna be
I'm so
that's
excited.
exciting.
I
Yeah.
really wanna hear what they do.
Nah, that's awesome. I'm
Yeah.
extremely excited to hear it as well. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I thought uh, everything that I thought number one that I learned a lot. I really like that your viewpoints and your perspective on a lot of things. Your I mean, mostly your artistry, just in everything. I think that's what I appreciate the most. So I appreciate you
Oh,
sharing it.
thanks. Yeah, thanks for interviewing. This is really
Of
fun. I
course.
love the opportunity to sit down and talk about music. If you ever just wanna, like, get coffee sometime to do that, I'm into it, so
I would love to. I'm sure that I'll have lots of more questions about your music after we get to hear Map songs premiered.
Cool, I'm excited.
Sweet.